Welcome to this edition of School Matters. I'm Joni Kopis, and today we have with us Mr. Rex Buchheit. Welcome.
Hi, Joni.
Your title, Rex, is a long one, Technology Integration Coordinator. What exactly does that mean? What are your duties?
I was hired by the district to make sure that the teachers were using the technologies that we had purchased for them. Mm-hmm. You know, with all of our, coming to the end of our building initiatives this year, we had purchased a lot of technologies for placement in the classroom. The smart boards, the document cameras, student response systems, and the Board of Education was concerned, are the teachers using the technology that we bought for them? So I embarked in August with a week-long series of workshops that were very well attended. People, the teachers volunteered their time to come in during the summer, and they learned how to use some of the technologies. Then during the course of the year, we would hold after-school technologies. And the teachers, again, volunteered free of their time to come in and learn. One of the exciting days in August was we had all the administrators come, and it really opened their eyes so that when they're dealing with teachers or evaluating teachers, they know of the technologies and how they can be used. As the year progressed, we've acquired a couple other new technologies. The world of technology is never standing still. And so we set out to pilot some different initiatives and doing some problem solving along the way. It's been a very, very exciting job.
Well, let's talk about technology, where we are and where we're going. But there's a phrase there that's sort of new. It's called digital immigrants versus digital natives. Explain that a little bit to us.
A digital immigrant, I'm a digital immigrant. I grew up with black and white television. Radio was almost as popular as the television, a rotary dial phone, and a newspaper every day, you know, at my family's house. The technologies that we had, if you think about that, you know, I'm 56 years old. Yeah, I am 56 years old.
You can tell that, I won't.
Okay. You know, we had no microwave.
Right.
We had none of our phones were tethered to the wall.
Right.
And so that was a technology that we knew we were comfortable with. If you think about the students in schools today, we call them digital natives. They grew up with multimedia exposures on devices like this, on their cell phones.
They don't know any better because they've always been exposed to it from day one.
Absolutely. They're a totally mobile society. You know, I tried texting, and I don't have the genetics in my thumbs to do the texting, but that's how they communicate, and that's how, you know, so anybody that's probably over close to 30 or more is a digital immigrant. Now, there's people who are severe digital immigrants who are still walking down the gangplank, getting off the boat, and there's people like me who I'm older, but I've always been interested in technology.
You're embracing it, but you're still a little behind the curve as opposed to the
I think it takes me
teenagers.
longer to pick up some things. When I'm working with some of these new teachers, you know, it's like the old coach having to jog with the new recruits. I have to go back and restudy it, where they get it and they run with it. But that's been a real joy of my job, is working with this enthusiasm that these new teachers have and helping channel them in the right way.
Right. I mean, we laugh, but it's true. I mean, if you're having problems with your iPhones or any technology, if you're struggling, you ask a teenager because they'll know how to figure it out. And it's sort of scary, but they do.
And that's funny because that's what a lot of teachers tell me they were doing with the smart boards. Because students will visit, you know, from classroom to classroom to classroom, and teacher A and B may be very adept at using a smart board, but when they got to the teacher C class, she's just learning. So she would refer to the student saying, well, how did Mrs. Teacher A do it? And they pick up on it, even though they're not the primary users of the smart board.
Yeah, it's sort of scary. But I think important thing to talk about, technology is great, and there's no doubt it's here to stay, but it's important to say technology is not replacing the teacher. It's only enhancing the teaching and learning in the classroom.
Absolutely. And ultimately, I serve the instructional department. I serve how can we make the learning process better, stronger, and more viable. And you have to always maintain that focus. You know, and that's what you have to do with any piece of technology. Is it's great and it's exciting and it's new and it's shiny, but is it going to impact education?
Right. I mean, it inspires and motivates the students, but and of course it entertains them as well. But yeah, it always comes back to the classroom teacher.
Yeah, and that's what I look at too. I look at a lot of pieces of software during the week. On this iPad, they're called apps, and a lot of them are free, a lot of them are 99 cents. But I have to wade through and decide, that's just a bunch of bells and whistles. There's no meat and potatoes to it. And trying to find out what is really going to change the way students are learning. And we're looking at something right now. We're getting ready to pilot an interesting program down at Riverview Elementary in the computer lab. There's a fellow named Khan, Khan, who created something called the Khan Academy. It's totally free. And students can get on, and it's the majority of the Khan activities are math-based. But he has created a matrix from simple single-digit addition all the way to post-calculus. And you, after you have success at this stage, you go to the next stage. But what's really interesting about Khan is every lesson, every unit that you study has a small instructional videotape how to do it. You know, in the past we had applications that would let you practice multiplication facts, geometry, whatever, but they never had a tutorial part to it. And so I'm real excited about what they're doing at Riverview and seeing if that's something, if it works out, something we probably want to roll out to the whole school system.
And you made that point before about, everybody hopping on the bandwagon. There's so many apps, so many things out there. We're all for it, but not that we're being cautious, but we are being cautious in that we do various pilot programs like you mentioned there at Riverview, and also using the iPads and having pilot programs for that to see what works, what doesn't work, age appropriateness, subject appropriateness. So we're on board, but we want to make sure it works. And as you said, we may learn from other people who may have gone full-fledged on something and it doesn't work. So we're there, but we're being a little cautious about it.
We're being cautious. We have a fiduciary duty to the citizens of Hamilton to make every one of our dollars stretch as far as possible. So when we pilot, and there is the need for piloting, to trying something out. For example, we bought 3 of the Kindle Fires to pilot, and I gave those to 3 people, like in the English department, 3 media people, and I got their feedback on that Kindle Fire, and it didn't meet what our needs were. So rather than get on the bandwagon, it's only $199, let's go buy 500 of them. I think we're making good, sound investments with our money, and there's no harm in letting some of the other school districts who are doing massive rollouts, it sounds good,
learn from them.
But they're every time you're moving ahead in virgin territory, there's always small pitfalls and problems. And all the tech people in the area communicate very well together. So we hear what's happening with them and vice versa.
Well, good. And we also you mentioned about teachers. We have all this, and it's great if they know it, but you have a unique way to do professional development. Talk about the videos.
Well, yeah, first of all, we were able to identify at every school an outstanding teacher who was very tech savvy, who had an affinity to learn technology. And that's who we used as our teachers in the summertime, and we found that to be very effective, that teachers responded very well to being taught by fellow teachers because they've been there, they've done that, there was empathy and understanding. So then, as we're going through the process, we had an outside consultant come in, Glenn Meeks, and he said something that people really need to do is put some stuff on videotape. And I go, yeah, why aren't we doing this? So we have set up a program where we're videotaping the lessons, and what we're doing is trying to do a 5 to 10, 15-minute video clip about a specific need. For example, if I were doing a video series on the iPad, I would probably create 15, 20 of them, but they're all subject specific, and they're very small, because you don't want to sit there and watch an hour or 2 or 3 hour video. Usually when you're in the field, you forget one small aspect. How do I import a class? Well, if we have that on a video, you could go right there and do it. The other neat thing that we were doing with these videos is they are all sequential. So we did one for what are called student response clickers, and there's like 15 videos in a series. No longer does a teacher have to leave their school at the school, go to another school, sit for a couple hours in another person's classroom
Right.
and learn. They could do the learning online.
And they could pick one of those 15
They could
series, or all of
watch
them.
all 15 and be certified. Then, if they want to call me and say, I need a visit, I need a technical person to help me, myself or one of these other technical teachers would come out and spend an hour with them, answer their specific questions. We're getting more bang for our buck, and and it's easier for the teachers to do so. And then, yes, the library's there so that 6 months from now you forget something,
It's
you go,
there.
you don't have to read the whole thing. You go right to that
And
specific
they're not missing
issue.
classroom instruction, pulling them out for professional
Absolutely.
development. They're doing it
On their own
online,
time.
yeah, prep time or what have you. Let's talk Schoology. What's that?
Schoology is something, this year in February, there were 6 teachers across the district got to go to a convention in Columbus called eTech. And eTech is a huge technology convention specifically for school technology. And and I went up there with them. The teachers, we attended like about 5 or 6 different classes per day. And in the evening, we'd sit and we'd come up with some ideas. Well, there was a rumbling amongst these teachers saying, we just went to this booth called Schoology. It's phenomenal. And we got to find it. So they finally drugged me over there. And we talked to the Schoology representatives. And they have a program which it can revolutionize and rejuvenate education. One of the factors that is stifling for us in order to improve learning is that we only have 6 hours in the day.
Right.
Well, with Schoology, it allows you to extend the learning environment beyond the school day. Schoology is a school-home connection program, and when the students get on, they're going to think they're looking at Facebook because it looks exactly like Facebook. So number one, I've got student appeal just on the look and format.
Sure.
But what they don't know, and they're going to know now, is that all the things that are written in there are filtered. It has the same type of filters that we have at school, so they can't go to inappropriate sites or say inappropriate things.
Right.
It allows the teacher to post all their lessons, their handouts, and even give them additional assignments that they can do at home. Now, all the child needs at home is access to the internet and a computer. But when there was a movie a while back called Waiting on Superman,
Right.
and Superman, it kind of bashed public schools a little bit, and it highlighted 5 charter schools that did extremely well. Well, if you look at what was it about those particular charter schools that made the big difference, they all extended the day. You know, some of them had the students staying there 7 days a week.
Right.
Some had coming back on Sunday. Some of them ran 2 hours longer. And I'm thinking to myself, well, we're not going to have them spending the night at Highland, but we can extend the school day. And we did this with an older program called Moodle for only our AP students. But now we're going to be pushing this out for teachers who want to start to pilot it next year in grades 7 through 12.
I was going to ask if it was elementary or secondary.
We're going to start with 7.
secondary.
Again, it's a cost factor issue.
Right.
We're going to start with 7 to 12. And then anybody in grades K through 6, they can do the free version. It doesn't give them the record keeping and accountability. But the Schoology also allows us to have groups. Again, this is a neat side benefit. You could form a group of all 5th grade social studies teachers. And instead of bringing all the 5th grade social studies teachers to a meeting, they could get online and they could share ideas, they could share lessons, they could pose questions.
Right.
And so you have the school student side, but you have this teacher development side, which I'm real excited about.
Well, that's good. And you mentioned the student response systems or the clickers, the iPads, smart boards. Are those all throughout the district? How many do they have? Or is the iPad mostly at the secondary level? Is it all over? Smart boards, are they on the regular classrooms, special ed classrooms?
That's a good question.
Explain a little bit about that.
That's a big question,
Thank
so
you.
here I go. Smart boards were originally placed with teachers who wrote a grant, a competitive grant. And I believe we started with about 80. And we probably have about 110 smart boards now. And we're still waiting like the last 10 to get installed
Right.
with the construction. And so teachers had to write a grant, had to agree to go to training, so forth. The document cameras were put in everybody's classroom.
Those sort of replaced the old overhead
The
projectors
old
we
overhead
used
or
to
the
have.
opaque. And
Right.
I remember one of my teachers, his hair would smoke, and you could tell it was
Yes.
time to switch class. His hair would start to smoke.
Yes.
But yeah, the overhead the document camera is there. The clickers, we gave about 6 to each elementary school. And then at the secondary schools, they had an older style clicker that was not very effective. And so we talked about it, and there were some funds available. They replaced all those clickers this year with a new type of clicker. And one of our teachers, Larry Rose, is just finishing up doing the initial training sessions on these. These new clickers, they look like an old BlackBerry.
Oh, uh-huh.
They have a full keyboard. Students can do true, false, yes, no, multiple choice, but they also can write in a 144-character answer.
So give us an example. Let's say geography class. They're taking a test or a review for a test.
Yeah. Okay, so what's really cool, you get your clicker, and every student has assigned a school ID number. And so the kids all know this. So they assign their school ID number. The teacher looks on the line and says, Billy, you haven't signed in yet. So it knows who's all signed in, ready to take the test. Now the test can be either presented over the projector in the room using a dot cam, or you could give the student a paper pencil test. I mean, a paper test.
Right.
The students proceed through the test, and their answers are logged on here. Once the student is done, the teacher automatically knows what that student did. So for example, in a geography class, the students take the test. You come up to me with your test. Students are still taking the test. And I say, Joni, you got an 85%. There's 6 questions you missed. I'd like you to go back and look at these 6 and see what's going on. The powerful thing with this is that you don't have to do a full test with this. Some teachers are using these clickers every day. And this is how they're using it, is so powerful, is they may ask the class 5 questions at the end of the lesson. And those 5 questions are about the content of that day's lesson.
Right.
The results of that data drives what I'm doing tomorrow.
So the teacher would know, of 25 students, 20 of them didn't get this question.
I
so
better reteach
I better go
that.
back. Yes.
I better reteach that.
So it helps the teacher know what they got, what they didn't get.
The teacher knows whether to put on the brakes at certain spots or put the gas pedal down, saying, they got it, let's move on. And that's called formative assessment. Using assessment to drive instruction. And that's what I'm really hoping that our clickers do become used every single day, and not just the end of the unit test.
So, and it's kindergarten through 12th grade. A teacher signs out, I'm a 4th grade math teacher, and I go and say I need it for this week or this day, and they sign off, and,
Right.
and of course, enter the student's ID number.
What we did at the elementary is we encouraged 2 or 3 or 4 teachers to share one set.
Right.
So they don't have to go to the library every time, but they're in a pod, and I could go, are you using the clickers this afternoon?
I need it Monday, I need it Thursday, that type
and
thing.
you work it out so that you don't need to buy one set of clickers for everybody. You can do a cooperative sharing and be very effective.
So it doesn't have to be subject specific or grade specific. Really, you could almost tweak it to whatever grade or subject you're teaching.
Yep, there was a Kathy Esseridge, a teacher. She's even doing spelling lists on it. It could be about any subject that you want, but you have the instant results, and then the program gives the teacher a graphic breakdown. And not only did they miss this problem, but the answer was B. Majority class answered C. Now, why did they answer C? And then you're getting into the whole misconceptions of what's going on in my class and what do I need to reteach.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty neat. And again, I think the kids feel because they're very interactive. They think they're Game Boy or whatever, so it's very interactive. Let's talk about iPads. What do we do with those?
You can do about anything you want. Seriously, we started back in the spring of last year looking at some iPads, and we ended up buying what's called a beta license for iPads. And we went ahead and bought the beta license, and it's a developer's license, so if I want to develop programs. But it gave us some insight. The iPad 2s came out, and you were able to what's called mirror them. What mirroring means is if you had another device, it's called an Apple TV, and it's about this big, and it's like a router for the iPad.
Right.
You could take whatever's on the iPad and project it somewhere. So at home, you could project it on your big screen TV, look at your family photographs and so forth. But we got the idea, what if there's some great lessons on the iPad and the color and it's vibrant and it's three-dimensional and it's interactive. I would like my whole class to see it, but it doesn't make sense walking around showing it this way. So we started working with the iPads and being able to send a message to our projectors that are in the room. And that took us about 6 to 8 months, working with Vartech, working with SWOCA. Finally, we came up with a solution in January. And now the teachers who have iPads, and that's what I've been doing these last couple of weeks, is working with the tech staff to put the Apple TV in those rooms that have the iPads. We, as a district, we bought about 110 iPads for teachers. The special ed department bought 30. We did a pilot of 30 at Linden in an elementary computer lab.
Right. 5th and 6th grade students, I think, right?
Yes. And then at the Job Development Center, the Teacher Academy has a set. And then at the secondary, each administrator was given 5 iPads, and they gave them out like to department heads.
Right.
And getting a lot of feedback from them. But in the meantime, we probably had about 100 teachers buy iPads on their own.
Yes.
And because they saw the potential that was there. I must say, you know, what you can do with these in terms of classroom management, you can keep your records on there, but you can create, you can teach, you can show, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers are familiar with like Google Earth.
Right.
Google Earth. Well, you can type in an address, and it will go from the picture of the Earth down to a satellite image of the back of your house.
Right.
Well, what one enterprising teacher has done is taken Google Earth and linked it to the great works of literature. So John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. The Job family leaves Oklahoma and they go to California. This person has every chapter. You could go and log in, and in this chapter, they're in this part of Oklahoma. Here's the satellite vision of that as they travel west. And that's just the creativity. We had a teacher named Matt Shermer who had a note-taking program. And the note-taking program was neat. He could write his notes on here, but at the same time, it's recording an audio portion of the. So if there's a lecturer going on, the program would record the lecturer and he could write the notes. Well, what he came up with was a genius idea too. He took that idea. He has several students who have an IEP, and it says they must have the test read to them. And he has a teacher's aide that helps them read the test. And in the course of a day, she may have to read the same test 7 times.
Right.
Well, in order to be sure that she's consistent and fair, and by the 7th time reading the test, let's say I'm going to ask you, what lake borders Ohio? Is it, and this is my 7th time doing it. Is it Lake Michigan? Is it Lake Huron? Is it Lake Erie? Is it Lake, Champlain? And you don't realize you're doing that.
Right.
So what she did, she took this note-taking app. She went in on the tablet and wrote question 1. Then she read question 1. She waited 30 seconds. Question 2, then read question 2.
So all 7 times it sounded the same voice.
And so she goes in. Johnny does it. She could be walking around the room proctoring. He hits number 1, it reads the question. Number 2 reads the question. So that's been really cool. How people are finding uses more and more for the iPad.
And what's important, I think, not only iPad, but the whole technology is that in several years, all the state standards, everything's going to be online assessment.
Yeah,
starting at grade 3. 2015,
we're going to be testing students with a new set of standards called the Common Core. And the Common Core is truly it's like throwing out the whole Ohio achievement standards, throwing those out, bringing a whole new set of standards in, and it's us, and it's like 22 or more other states that have joined together and saying we're going to adopt these Common Core standards. And I'm excited about where they're going with the Common Core standards because they're embedded with the idea of 21st century skills. And that means this, but it also means problem solving. Being able to teach yourself new skills to get a new job. When I graduated, probably half of my graduating class went and worked at Champion. They worked at Moser. They worked at Beckett, and that's all they really were, or Fisher Body.
Right.
All they really needed to know. Today's graduates will probably have 8 different jobs in their lifetime, and they have to be able to learn new skills. They have to be able to teach themselves once they're out of school. So the new tests are not going to be a paper and pencil test like the OAA and the OPTs were. They're going to be online testing.
And that's starting at grade 3. So in
3
reality,
through 12.
Students in grade 1 and 2 need to be familiar with technology. So when they get to grade 3, not only are they going to take the test, but they need to learn how to manipulate whatever technology they're using.
We really need to begin stressing some basic keyboarding skills too.
Right.
So
It's a whole mindset. Then when you and I went to school, which we think is not that long ago, but maybe it has been.
It is. It's in 5 years from now, we may not recognize what we see because there's to be so much technology infused, and we're doing things quite a bit differently, like with online testing and stuff.
Right. And you mentioned earlier the technology consultant, and we have a technology committee that's been meeting and working on a 5-year plan. Let's talk a little bit about that and the process and how that's going.
Okay. When the history of Hamilton is unique in that we had a tech department, and then we were blessed with these federal funds, and then the taxpayers supported it, and all of a sudden we're going to build all these new buildings, which is great, but at the same time technology is growing. So as we're building these new buildings, it becomes pretty apparent we're not up to speed technology-wise. You have to have fiber optics running into the school, you have to have servers at every school, routers and switchers, and all this infrastructure in every school. And so we were kind of behind the 8 ball because we've got all these new schools. So we went with a third-party vendor to offer most of our technical internet access points. We have a local company called SWOCA, which is a government-controlled company that services all southwestern Ohio schools. And so we had VARTech come in, and they got everything up and running for us.
Which is a big project in itself.
It was
all the
huge,
new schools
if you think about,
a little scary.
not building just like 10 houses, but building 10 mansions. And all the bricks and mortar and all the decisions had to be made. And every room in all of our 12 schools has to have wireless internet.
Right.
Has to have drop points. So it was a huge undertaking.
Right.
And we made a lot of progress on it. But at the same time, we got swept up in the building. And so now the dust is starting to settle.
Right.
And we're asking, where are we going to go in the future? So it was great that the powers to be said, we need to bring in a consultant. We need a technology plan for the future. You just can't start, well, give a few dollars here, a few dollars here.
Right.
Let's go this way. No, that's not a good idea. So we've had a series of meetings back in the fall and winter with this Mr. Meeks fella. Got us thinking about what do we need? What do we want? And what I really liked about Mr. Meeks was he's a technical guy, okay? But his driving force is you always have to think what's going to be improving education.
Right, yeah.
What's going to improve, what's the bottom line and what's going to drive improved learning. So he wasn't all about the bells and whistles.
Right.
It was more about effective teaching.
He complimented us, and we have all the infrastructure, which he said a lot of school districts are behind, but we were fortunate, like you mentioned, with the new buildings, we have that. And then he was also very adamant on the committee itself. Yes, we want tech-savvy people, but we also wanted people that were not so much into technology. And we wanted administrators, we wanted principals, we wanted classroom teachers, we wanted, non-certificated. So it's bigger than just, specific group. We try to do a well-rounded group of people on the committee, which I think helped enrich the conversation and ultimately the 5-year plan that we're working on.
Right. I mean, I was working with a teacher who is not tech savvy. She understands it and appreciates it. If you had all the tech savvy people, no one would be listening to the majority.
Right.
You have in any growth pattern, you have this curve, and out here are these young kids I'm talking about earlier who are just taking the ball and running with it.
Sure, that 20%.
Yeah, and then you have this body of people who are saying, I like it, I want to learn a little bit more, You know, and that's the people that I have to work with, and I'm really trying to move and address and help them along that path.
Right.
And then you have the other 10% of the people.
Not too sure.
They're not too sure. But once you get the majority, the 50% here on board, everybody will come on board. So, but it's been I've enjoyed the whole process.
Right. I think it's been very, good dialogue back and forth.
Right.
And again, unfortunately, as everything is, a lot of this is driven by finances and how everything plays out. So that's always, in the back of people's mind. Yes, let's do this, but what's the cost? And you have to balance it along with everything else.
And that was good because, Mr. Meeks has some recommendations that the board and Mrs. Baker are going to say, can we afford to bite this much off?
Right. Yeah.
But I'm going to go back and say I like where we have staged ourselves, where we've positioned ourselves. We're not out there in the front, but we're not behind.
Right.
Like we were only one of 2 schools in Ohio that figured out how to use these through a projector wirelessly.
Right.
So we have some really good minds in the district and great ideas, but we're not charging out blindly, I think.
Well, we mentioned iPads, smart boards. Those are here now. What's to say what's going to look like in 3-5 years? I mean, these could be obsolete, in any time.
Right. They probably only have truly a 3-year shelf life.
Right.
So they're probably going to be obsolete.
Like a disposable camera
right.
almost,
And then there's a lot of districts and a lot of talk right now about students bringing their own technology to school. Right. And that sounds well and good, but you have to realize, and that may be well good in school B. It only has 1,000 students in their school district.
Right.
We're talking 10,000 students. So think about having 10,000 people using a mobile device in addition to the 2,000 mobile devices you already have on.
Right.
We have all the fiber going to the building that could handle all those.
Right.
But we don't have all the waypoints, all the what you would call a router in your home. We don't have enough of that in place to take place. Plus, how are we going to govern that? How are we going to protect that?
Right.
So we know that we would like to head there, but that's probably 3 years out, 4 years out, maybe even 5 years out.
Yeah, and to be fair and equal to everyone too, if you have a classroom of 25, well, 15 have iPhones or whatever they could bring in, but then you have the other 10, and so you've got to be fair, and so does the district, supply
Correct.
those 10, and so, there is a lot of questions about that. I mean, I agree with you. I think in the future it's going to be there. It's a matter of how to get there, when to get there, and what's the appropriate way to go.
Yeah, I mean, are we ever going to have the funds where we can buy one for everybody? Probably not.
Right.
But yeah, do we have a duty for those students who do not have the means to have a device when we start bringing it, we're going to give them a device? And that's a question that we need to hurdle.
And especially with the state making everything online assessments and testing, those kids, kindergarten, first, second grade, they're going to have to know how to work that. And that's scary, I think, to some parents about that. But in order for them to be successful starting in grade 3 with their online testing, they're going to have to be familiar with that a year or two before.
Correct.
And how do you get there?
Yeah.
So it'll be scary. Well, I'm sure you'll figure it all out.
It's
fun. It's little.
I was a principal for 20 years, and I thought that was a great, rewarding job and tiring. But this has been a whole new set of challenges, and I've actually loved every day I do it because there is always something new. But I'm feeding off this energy level of these young people that I'm around, and it makes me come up with new ideas and makes me want to try out new things.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, and I think that's the beauty of it is as you get the digital natives coming in to teach, and of course the students too. They're just going to take it and go with it and leave some of our digital immigrants behind.
That's true.
That could be. Well, anyhow, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, and we'll look forward to hearing more from you about that as years go on.
Love to.
All right. That
Thanks,
sounds good.
Joni.
Sure. And for TV Hamilton, this is Joni Kopis. We'll see you next time on School Matters, because school matters.